September means football. Let's face it, football is the belle of the ball in September. What better way to usher in the fall? Did you breathe it in the air today? Did you take a nice whiff? Did you inhale that autumn smell into your lungs? This is football time right now. And nothing said September when I was a kid quite like an NFL game played over a baseball diamond. That is the golden era of the National Football League. Did you breathe it in the air today? Did you take a nice whiff? Did you inhale that autumn smell into your lungs? Well, I don't know if it's completely here yet, but it is the first day of fall. Happy first day of fall, everybody. I'm sure that the Christmas is going to be out on the shelves in about 3 minutes, based upon my understanding of how American holidays work now, but let's take them one at a time. I've still got to experience a few more days of September. Then Michael Myers is going to start stabbing people, and Linus is going to be in the pumpkin patch waiting for a sentient pumpkin man to show up. He should have been in significant counseling and therapy. I don't know what the Van Pelt parents were doing there. Clearly an insane person. Then we have Thanksgiving. A little planes, trains, and automobiles, perhaps, for me. And then we'll finally get to Christmas. Slow down. Slow your roll, because the autumn wind is a raider. That's right. This is football time right now. And nothing said September when I was a kid quite like an NFL game played over a baseball diamond. Take a look at that and tell me that it's not beautiful. My friend Jim Everett would tell me that it's not beautiful, because he tried to run an offense on that back in the days, and he assures me that it wasn't a hell of a lot of fun, but it wasn't my problem, Jim. I'm just a fan, so I love it. And those days are over now, of course. Gone are the multi-purpose stadiums, but forever in our hearts. If you're of a certain age, you're going to remember that layout, and it said, September is here, and September is one of the best sports months, let's face it. The NFL shows up, you've got the baseball playoffs coming around the corner. The pennant drive ain't what it used to be. Let's be honest. Now, if you don't win the division, you just make the playoffs as a wild card. There's not nearly as much at stake. Back in the old days, those last 10 days, 2 weeks of the regular season were as intense as the playoffs in a lot of cases, but such it is. And by the way, we bid summer farewell yesterday. Do you remember? Did you remember last night? I hope that you remember, because you probably have Alzheimer's if you don't, because the 21st night of September was last night. And there, of course, Earth, Wind, and Fire. No, hang on. I'm being told that's actually former Milwaukee Brewers all-star first baseman Cecil Cooper, who enjoyed a career year in 1980 when he hit .352 and led the American League in both runs batted in and remembering the 21st night of September. You see what I did there? You're either going to get that one or you're not. And if you get it, you see, he looks like the guy. Used to be a thing in our society where guys could bald and they would fight it. I don't know if it was Stone Cold Steve Austin or who exactly ushered in the era of male pattern baldness equals shaving your head. I preferred it when guys fought the valiant fight against the raging they were against the dying of the light. My friends, is what was happening. But September means football. Let's face it, football is the belle of the ball in September. Major League Baseball, for the hardcore fans, obviously we're going to be into it all the way through the postseason. But for a lot of people, such as Ronnie T-shirts, football season is everything. And when I was a kid, NFL films was everything. What better way to usher in the fall than with a little John Facenda and some soaring orchestral music while Fran Tarkenton or somebody scrambles around like a madman. And there he is, the voice of God himself, John Facenda. Imitated, never duplicated. I'm going to attempt to imitate him now, and I'm going to imitate him badly. If you are a man of a certain age, at some point in your life, you have done a John Facenda imitation. At least if you're a guy who's worth hanging out with. And I'm going to do one, and it's going to be bad, but this was the most famous line probably that he ever read. Written by Steve Sable, the great Steve Sable. The autumn wind is a pirate, blustering in from sea. With a rollicking song he sweeps along, swaggering boisterously. His face is weather-beaten. All right, well, we could go on and we could go on. But that is my childhood. That's my childhood right there. And it could have been worse, couldn't it? I did that a little better than I thought I was going to do it. I'll quit while I'm ahead. But September means for me those feelings that I used to get back in the old days. You just started back to school. You were a few weeks maybe into the new semester. Monday Night Football was back, and it takes me back to those days when the NFL looked, in my opinion, just perfect. We're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers throwbacks a little bit later in the program. The Patriots breaking out their throwbacks this weekend as well. But this is how the NFL will always look in my heart. Just look at those sweet bastards, will you? Some people might prefer the old Bengals helmet that just simply said Bengals across the side. That's about the only quibble that some might make. That to me right there in my heart and in my mind, that is the golden era of the National Football League. And thank God we had NFL films to document it and capture it. I'm talking about John Facenda. Let's give a shout out to Ed Sable and his son Steve Sable. And I've tweeted this before, and I really mean it. If we're really breaking it down, those two guys right there probably did more to increase my enjoyment and appreciation of professional football than any player. And I say that with all reverence and respect for every great player that I have watched and admired through the years. Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Earl Campbell. On down the line, man, everybody that you could possibly name, all of the great ones, those two guys right there changed the entire way that a generation looked at football. And here's a guy that you probably don't know. And if you don't know, you need to know. So I'm going to do a little public service here by reflecting on this man. Sam Spence is the guy who did all the music. Take a look at this guy right here. Sam Spence, the late Sam Spence. You should know his name. This sweet bastard composed the NFL film soundtrack. So all your favorites, da 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 da. Da 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 da. See, you know it, right? Come on. Everybody sing along. There are no lyrics. But you know that. If you're of a certain age, it's in your bloodstream. That's the guy who did it. Put him in the Hall of Fame. Why is he not in the Hall of Fame? Facenda is in the wing for announcers. I say Facenda should get his own bust. Jerry Jones gets a bust. Why doesn't John Facenda get one? Give Sam Spence one too. The Sables, thank God, are in the Hall of Fame as well. But NFL films, take a look at this. I've tweeted about it. And I've tweeted about it on more than one occasion, but I think this tweet is the one that summarizes it the most. It is stunning how good NFL films was back in the 1970s and in the 80s and in the 90s and today for that matter. I don't think NFL films has ever lost its fastball, but the absolute pinnacle of NFL films, I would argue 70s and 80s, especially the 70s. Facenda with the poetry over Sam Spence's incredible scores, while, as I said earlier, Fran Tarkenton scrambles or Gale Sayers weaves through a defense, returning a punt for a touchdown, whatever. The Sables made art for intelligent people. They expected the audience to live up to it. Sports culture today produces nothing that can touch it. All you get today is Ryan Clark arguing with some woman on ESPN. Or something like that. That's 2025. 1974, 1975, you got actual art that didn't assume that the audience had a 68 IQ on average. And I think ESPN, and I think that a lot of outlets today, it's not just ESPN, they pander to the lowest common denominator. The Sables never did that, and that's why they're great. And we'll get to a little more football later in the program. In fact, we're going to get to a lot more football later in the program. But this episode is brought to you today by PrizePicks. My friends, you and I make decisions every day. But on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. So don't miss any of the excitement this season with PrizePicks, where it is good to be right. It's fun and simple to play. I recommend taking advantage of the max discounts. I've been a winner on a couple of occasions using the max discounts. It's the best place to win money this season. Join millions of users and sign up today. And best of all, at PrizePicks, when you use my code Ricky, you're going to get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Yes, it is as simple as that. Use my code Ricky, that is RICKY, and you're going to get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks, where it's good to be right and profitable. Todd Bowles might be wrong for this. However, a lot is being made today of Todd Bowles being asked about a moment after the Buccaneers were leaving with their victory, narrow 2-point home victory over the New York Jets. Cameras caught Buccaneers tight end Payne Durham giving a hug to Todd Bowles, and Todd Bowles was asked about it after the game in the press conference and had a very, shall we say, interesting answer.
What did Payne Durham say to you when he wrapped his arm around you in the tunnel?
Me and Payne have a relationship not many people know about, and we're secret lovers.
Coach, Tom, what did you say during the locker room at the halftime?
Secret lovers. There they are. Look at that. Secret lovers. That's who we are. Who was that by? Does anybody know? I got a little soft R&B moment there. Look at that. Well, it's nice to see. They're not gay. They're just two men having fun. It's what is being reported now. Todd Bowles, of course, joking around. But it's nice to see a little personality from any NFL coach in the modern day. They won't let them dress for personality, so at least they can say things that make them stand apart. But I remember when each coach was able to give his own individualistic, artistic fashion statement every week. And Tom Landry, hard to imagine Tom Landry just wearing some hoodie, isn't it? Imagine Tom Landry dressing like a modern NFL coach. It would be sacrilegious. I like the NFL better when head coaches look equally capable of calling for a blitz or perhaps solving a mystery on a BBC TV show that your mom watches. Tom Landry, so classy, almost too classy. You look at it now, at the time it seemed normal. I'd be watching football when I was a kid. You cut over, there's Tom Landry dressed like that. Well, of course he is. He's Tom Landry. Now you look at it and it's just like, my God, it must be how people felt when they were looking back at pictures of Connie Mack wearing a suit in the dugout for the Athletics or something. Kids today cannot even begin to comprehend the way that it used to be. But you know what? Todd Bowles isn't the only Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach who likes to give a colorful quote or two. Some of you I know will remember the great John McKay, who was a dominant coach at USC and then took over the expansion, 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who went 0-14. They didn't win until, I believe, their 25th game in franchise history before they got a W. And McKay was asked, how did you feel about your team's execution? And he said, I'd be in favor of it. Here's another one of the great John McKay quotes. We didn't tackle today, but we made up for it by not blocking as well. So there you have it, John McKay. So Todd Bowles continuing a tradition of Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coaches making quips here. One more for you here in the baseball department. Cal Raleigh continues to have one of the most exceptional offensive seasons that we've ever seen, and one that it at least seems to me is getting precious little media coverage when you weigh it against what he's actually done. Cal Raleigh with his 58th home run yesterday. He is now 4 short of Aaron Judge's American League record of 62. Of course, just a few short years ago, Aaron Judge becoming the first man to eclipse Roger Maris's historic number of 61 home runs. Yeah, number 61 went down back in 1998, but it's only been beaten by National Leaguers up until this point. McGuire, Sosa, and Bonds. Cal Raleigh has a chance to get past it as well, to join Aaron Judge as the only American League player who has ever gone past Roger Maris. Some people are saying that it's the greatest season by a catcher ever. I would say calm down a little bit. Johnny Bench had some pretty big seasons too, and Johnny Bench would throw out over 50% of runners as well. Defense is still a part of the equation, folks. So 58 home runs is tremendously impressive. I'm not ready to say that it is the greatest season that any catcher has ever had, however. But as I tweeted over the weekend, I do think that Cal Raleigh deserves more recognition than he's receiving for what he's done. It's a little bit of ho-hum. You'll hear Big Dumper once in a while. But this guy has 58 fucking homers, and it feels like nobody really gives a shit. Am I wrong? Can we give this guy some recognition? It used to be if you hit 58 home runs when I was a kid, they would have been putting you on trial for being a warlock or something. You know, George Foster was the only guy between 1965 and 1990 to have a 50 home run season. Let me repeat that. The only guy between 1965 and 1990. That's a quarter of a century. He was the only guy to do it. He hit 52, and I grew up thinking that George Foster was fucking John Henry. Not the owner of the Red Sox, the other, the train tracks. Yeah, you fucking know. All right. With that said, my pleasure to welcome back to the program a man who is equally adept at talking about football, baseball, and a variety of other sports. So I think I'm going to put that skill set to the test today. Always a pleasure to welcome to the program the New York Post great Mike Vaccaro. Vac, how's it going, man?
Ricky, great to be back with you. How you doing? How was your summer?
It was good. It was good, man. Great summer. Gosh, dude, it's we got a lot of New York stuff to talk about here.
Yep.
A lot of New York stuff to talk about. I don't know, man. Like, pick your poison here. Do we talk about the baseball teams that have been kind of fumbling and bumbling a little bit this season? But one, certainly the Yankees look like clearly they're a lock to make the playoffs. The Mets are hanging on to a wild card spot as we speak. Couple of things here. Let's start with the Yankees. That bullpen obviously has given Booney a lot of Maalox moments throughout this season. But the Yankees still 2 games back in the East, still a very, very good team, an explosive offense. What do you think of the Yankees' chances right now of actually doing something worthwhile in the postseason this year?
You know what? That's a great entree point, Ricky, because to me, you were talking about all the craziness that's going on in New York. Every team is a shit show, except one. And it's funny because every single year, I get a litany of people begging me to fire Boone, fire Cashman, fire Steinbrenner if that's possible. And every year, the Yankees figured it out. They didn't 2 years ago, but every year, they're the team. Meanwhile, Mets fans are don't know what to do with themselves. Giants fans and Jets fans, can't wait for next year already. We're already looking ahead to the draft, and here the Yankees are. They're going to be in the playoffs again, and they'll take their shot. And that's what the Yankees do. They take their shot. Now, more years you feel better. Some years you feel better about them than others. I feel good about the Yankees the way they've played better in this last stretch of the season. Now you can put an asterisk there if you want. They played a lot of bad teams and gotten well against a lot of bad teams. But to me, it doesn't really matter. Once you get in, it's about getting hot for about 3.5 weeks. And the Yankees are certainly capable of doing that because they have the offense. And yeah, the bullpen is going to terrify you. It's going to terrify every Yankees fan because at one point or another, every key member of that bullpen has looked like they're throwing batting practice. And if that happens, at the wrong time in October, you're going to be in trouble. The Yankees have fine starting pitching, but they're going to be playing October games. So that means those games aren't going to be decided until the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning most nights. And if you have a bullpen that seems vulnerable, that's going to be a hard road to hoe. But look, to me, when you look at the whole of baseball, but certainly the whole of the American League, right now, who do you say is better than the Yankees? I realize they're more than likely to finish second in their own division, but I feel better about the Yankees than I do about the Blue Jays right now. I feel better about the Yankees certainly than I do about the Tigers. Even if who knows if the Tigers will even make it to the finish line? And if the Guardians get in, the Yankees have owned the American League Central for years and years. The Astros are their nemesis, but the Astros can't get out of their own way. So, right now I can't imagine that you would feel good about taking a team better than the Yankees right now. Now, that's not to say they're going to cruise to the pennant again and get to the World Series for the second straight year, but you got to feel pretty good about it, despite those bullpen issues, which are significant because we've seen them, lose games. We've seen them make games that should have been closer than they had to be. But you know what? They all get to turn the page in a week, so that'll be a big thing for the Yankees.
So how about those Mets? What is what's the mood around the Queen's finest here as they're attempting to squeak in to the playoffs over the course of the next week?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was supposed to be a celebratory weekend at Citi Field this weekend because the Mets went over 3 million fans in this homestand. They drew their most fans since the second year of the ballpark, or the first year of the ballpark. And we thought this was going to be a victory lap for them, at least getting in the playoffs. And of course, that's not the case. They lost 2 or 3 to the woeful Nationals, looking every bit as woeful themselves. They were booed off the field in game 81 at home. And now they have to go on the road and look, they're tied with the Reds, but they don't have the tiebreaker. So if they go 5-1, they got to hope that the Reds, have 2 losses in them. And the way the Reds are playing, that doesn't look like it's necessarily a shoe-in. They're playing the Pirates. They do have to face Skeens on Wednesday, and then they have to play the Brewers, who have already said they're going to try and play, sharp baseball because they don't want to be essentially off for a week because they'll get the 4 or 5 days off because they get the bye. So, but that's not a comfortable place for the Mets to be. They really just have to start winning baseball games. And look, basically they've got to win 5 out of the next 6, and they've only won 5 out of 6 once since the middle of July. Now, can they do it? Well, sure. They shouldn't be in this position. They probably should already be in safely, but they've been playing terrible baseball for 3 months. They kept saying, we'll get out of it, we'll get out of it, we'll get out of it. They never really got out of it. Even 2 weeks ago, they seemed safe, and then they just started losing and losing and losing. And that's a bad formula for this time of the year. Now, look, I'll say the same thing about the Mets that I said about the Yankees. You get in, and all of a sudden you get to recalibrate and start over again. And, then they're playing with house money. But, this team's legacy is really on the line. They were expected to at least follow up with an equal season to last year, if not surpass last year. Only 2 teams in team history have ever gotten the postseason in back-to-back years, as extraordinary as that seems like. And this team is supposed to be the third, and right now it's at best a 50-50 proposition they can do it. And, if you have a Mets fan in your life, be extra kind with them the next couple of days because they're a little fragile.
Well, if Mets fans are fragile, I can only imagine how every football fan in Gotham is feeling 3 weeks into the season. A big donut for the entire town so far. Giants and Jets struggling, as Joe Namath once said. Who's got it worse? Is there a glimmer of hope here to be found for either franchise, or is it really a situation where we're basically already set to turn the page and hope for high draft picks next year?
Look, I think in the short term, I do think the Jets. Look, I mean, do I think they're going to make the playoffs or starting 0-3? Probably not. But I think we're going to start with the immediacy of this year. I do think the Jets have enough of a schedule, and they've shown enough. Look, they could very easily be 2-1. I get it. That's a loser's lament. They're 0-3. That's what they are. To me, they've been competitive in 2 of those 3 losses, and they do have the tools in place to win games this year. Now, can they get to 9, which is probably what you're going to have to need to get to be the, in the conversation? Well, that means going 9-5 the rest of the way. Good luck to you. So in the short term, I guess you feel better as a Jets fan. But I think that overall, you have to feel good about the Giants, because obviously Abdul Carter is already making an impact after only 3 games in his career. And look, I mean, they have Jackson Dart, who is the wild card, because look, nobody's ever more popular than the backup quarterback, and no one's ever really more popular than a backup quarterback who's 23 years old and has it all in front of him. And so I think that's what Giants fans are having. Russ Wilson got booed off the field last night. And here's the problem, Ricky, is that, look, if you would have asked me on Labor Day, how do you think the Jets and the Giants are going to do their first 3 weeks? And I would have looked at both schedules, and I would have said, I think they're both going to be 0-3. I mean, neither one of them were exactly given a scheduling break for the first 3 games. So to me, it's not surprising that they're 0-3. I think I'm a little more pleasantly surprised by how competitive the Jets have been, notwithstanding that awful game against Buffalo in week 2. And the Giants, look, I mean, yes, they took the Cowboys to overtime, but now we're starting to look and see that maybe that might not be quite such an achievement, because the Cowboys look terrible. Again, against Washington week 1, they looked flat. And last night, look, the Chiefs basically were begging them to make things hard for them last night. They just refused to do it. And, it's just they have that young quarterback waiting in the wings. And I think that right now is what Giants fans, that's really all they care about. I think they've already written off this season for whatever it's going to be. Let's see what we have in Jackson Dart. And that doesn't bode well for the current coach and general manager, because if you start moving on in your mind, you've also maybe started moving on for the guys who are in charge. And look, I mean, I think that they have to be really, really bad for those guys to get fired this year. But I think it's in play for them to be really, really bad, because you look at that schedule for a team that finished in last place last year. That's the most ridiculous schedule I've ever seen. I'm not sure that you can find more than 2 or 3 wins sprinkled in that schedule. They'll probably get more because that's the way the NFL is. But so I'd say in the immediate right now, I'd say the Jets probably look a little better. But it's by a hair. And look, the Giants is all contingent upon what Jackson Dart is.
How long does Russell Wilson get? How much rope is there here for him to hold on to that starting job?
There's so many landmines ahead of them, though. That was the problem. You have one kind of break in the schedule when they get to play the Saints, although it's in New Orleans. And I'm sure right now the Saints are all saying, boy, I can't wait till we play the Giants. But I think if you want to give him a soft landing spot, that's probably the place to look. But you're surrounded there by games against the Eagles and against the Broncos and against just this, the Chargers next week. I just don't know that there's a safe landing spot. Now, maybe you don't need one. Maybe it's just best to throw him out there. Look, they've made packages for him the last couple of weeks. He's gotten in. So maybe it's just time to integrate him more. Maybe give him 20 snaps next week. I mean, is that a good way to do it? If Russ is playing well, I mean, who knows? But I mean, I think right now, everything about the Giants now is discovering if you have a franchise quarterback that's worth all the attention that he's gotten so far. And I think the only way to find that out is to throw him into the deep end of the pool.
If only the Giants had a stud at quarterback like the Indianapolis Colts.
Like Indiana Jones.
The Colts 3-0 and 1 punt. What the fuck is going on? Do you recognize number 17 in Indianapolis, Mike?
Well, I'll say this, I think I said this louder than most around here, because everybody was kind of enamored with the new coach and with the way Saquon played in 2022, excuse me. Feels like 2002. But Daniel Jones had a terrific year that year. The year the Giants, got to the playoffs, beat the Vikings in the playoff game, then got smoked against the Eagles. That's the season that earned Daniel that huge contract. And I thought he was worth it because I thought he was terrific that year. Look, the next year he gets hurt. Last year he was a mess, which is probably somewhat because he was, recovering from his injury. And I don't think him and Dayball ever clicked after he got hurt. I'm not sure how much of that you have to put on the coach, when you consider, what Jones is doing now. And think about the compounded part about being a New York football fan. Not only are you watching lousy football, not only are you watching subterranean quarterback play, but you look out in Vegas and you got Geno Smith slinging it all over the field. You look out in Seattle and you got Sam Darnold who's just slinging it all over the field. I mean, you got Daniel Jones doing what he's doing. Aaron Rodgers came in and of course got the last laugh on opening day. It's like if you don't have an ex-Jet quarterback at the helm, you're not really an NFL team this year. I can't wait till this week in Miami when Tua gets hurt and Zach Wilson comes in and throws for 525 yards. I mean, that seems inevitable, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the only thing that hasn't happened yet. All right, so Vac, I know you're a Super 70s guy going way back. I know you know this stuff, so I'm gonna give you an honor that few guests have ever had. I want you to sit in my co-pilot seat today as we take a look at America's poll of the day, and let's go to it now at Super 70 Sports on X, where the eagle flies higher than the Indianapolis Colts are flying with Daniel Jones under center. And here's what we have today, Mike. As always, just a mishmash of random things. We'll start today with the Karate Kid. That's the original. The old Daniel LaRusso, Mr. Miyagi, 84, whatever year that was. Then we've got McNuggets, McDonald's staple, of course. The lefty, Steve Carlton, 329 game winner, maybe the greatest slider in the history of baseball. And then we'll conclude with something that folks like to enjoy in autumn. Not quite yet, maybe, but bonfires. So, Vac, stack these up for me. How do you see it?
Well, on the ground for me, bonfires are fine. I mean, I have nothing against them. It's just that's a pretty strong foursome. So just personally, I'm going to put bonfires on the bottom of that list. Karate Kid, I love. So I think that it's a significant little bit higher on the list, even though I'm going to bring it at number 3. Who doesn't love the movie? And those characters all saved us during COVID, right? So it's we kind of owe them a debt of gratitude. Right. The Steve Carlton, was he had one of my favorite sports writing stories because back when I first joined the New York Post, I had an assignment to do a story, get as many of the living 300 game winners as possible for a story. I think this is when Roger Clemens was closing in on it. And I got almost all of them on the record. And of course, the one challenging one was always going to be Steve Carlton. And it took me about 2 weeks to track down a number. And then, I called him several times. Of course, he didn't have an answering machine because he was, kind of like Jeremiah Johnson, with a baseball cap most of his life. And I finally dialed the number once, and it was, "Hi, can I speak to Steve Carlton, please?" And he said, "This is he." And I explained what I was doing, and he just replied, I said, "Can I just get you a few minutes about the, being part of the 300 Club?" And he paused, and he said, "Thank you, no," and hung up. And so while that was, didn't help me in my story, I thought that was maybe one of the politest rejections I've ever gotten. But look, to me, McNuggets are beyond belief number 1 on that list for me. Specifically, McNuggets with hot mustard sauce. And let me go a step further. Forget the hot mustard that McDonald's gives you, which is kind of hot. I'm talking about like McSorley's hot, the kind you get at McSorley's with their cheese plate, which, I still have scars on my tongue. I'm talking about the greatest Chinese restaurant, that gives you this concoction, which they say is mustard, but really could be battery acid, because it's just, impossible to swallow, but it's wonderful. I mean, to me, that's the ideal combo. So that's the one that I'm checking the box on, Ricky.
Well, Mike, if the McNuggets aren't fresh, you might need that just to kill the taste of these things. Yeah. I've always felt like McNuggets they're really about 3 or 4 different products, depending upon what cycle in their lifespan you acquire them during. If you're lucky enough to get really, really fresh McNuggets, they're so good. And then occasionally I'll go by McDonald's at 11. I should know better, but occasionally, you go by McDonald's late. It's nobody's there. You go through the drive-through by yourself, and they just, they they hand you a box with 10 rocks in it. So on those days, I would probably favor Steve Carlton.
Yeah, I mean, as with all fast foods, Ricky, I mean, you kind of have to judge it on a sliding scale to understand, appreciate it. I mean, to me, if I'm not sure anybody's really enjoyed a White Castle sober, right? I mean, White Castle, however, when you've had a full evening of spirits, there's nothing better. But sober, you start wondering, gee, where'd this come from? So, I mean, I guess you just cancel your deal with White Castle. Sorry about that, buddy. But I mean, of course, I've had my share. So, but I think that's the same way with McNuggets. I mean, you get it the right part of the day, the right part of your day. More important, I think they're hard to beat.
That's the secret. All right, so you know what? We're very much on the same wavelength today. I would probably put, I don't know, for me, Karate Kid and Bonfires, I guess just for the amount of content I've gotten in tweeting about the Karate Kid through the years, it deserves third place. I'm like you, nothing against Bonfires. I enjoy a good bonfire, but hey, these are meant to be tough decisions, as you were alluding to. So that's going to be my 4.
Finish last, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, exactly. It comes down to McNuggets and Steve Carlton for me, and if my waistline is any indication, and I'm being honest, it's got to be McNuggets. So I'm gonna give the nod to McNuggets as well, and let's go ahead and light the candle here and see what Super 70 Sports Nation has to say today. Mike and I are in agreement. And it's a pretty close one, actually. Look at that.
We might help carry the vote.
Yeah, we're trying to help McNuggets rally here a little bit. The Karate Kid holding a tenuous 1.2 percentage point lead over Bonfires, coming in a little more strongly than I imagined. And where's the love for Steve Carlton today among my followers there?
I want to say that 92%, 99% of that 18.4% are probably based in the Philadelphia downtown and the suburbs is what I'm thinking.
a lot of former media members voting today. Mike, that might be what's happening. Hey, before you get out of here, let me ask you, are we going to bring the Ryder Cup back at Bethpage Black this year? What's your Ryder Cup prediction?
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, look, it's always a toss up. You just never know how the U.S. players are gonna do in a team competition. They always give great lip service to how important it is, and yet even as they say it, that they're in their minds thinking about cashing their next $2 million check that they'll win on their own. So, but I think that course brings out the best in a lot of people. So I do think the cream will rise. I think the U.S. is a better team. I think the atmosphere is going to be spectacular. I think it's going to rival, Brookline, the famous one in '99 outside of Boston, where they brought it back home, and sometimes some people were put off by the crowd influence on that event. But look, I think Bethpage Black is going to draw a very pro home team crowd, and I just think it's going to go down to Sunday because it always goes down to Sunday. I believe in Keegan Bradley as a captain. I think that his decision, which had to kill him to not give himself a captain's pick, has already been well received because it's so many of his players have talked about how selfless and active it was, and I think that they're really going to rally behind that because I think it was a great move to show that look, he's in it to win this, and it's not about him, it's about the team, and I think everybody else is going to feed off that.
Very good. I like the way you're thinking. I would hope that Brookline is kind of the blueprint. Maybe not have to come from so far behind. We don't need Ben Crenshaw to show up and give an impassioned speech this time around. But yeah, it should be good stuff. Vac, always a pleasure having you on the show, catching up with you. We appreciate you.
Sounds good, Ricky. Anytime. Be talking to you, bud.
All right, he is Mike Vaccaro of the New York Post, one of the very best in the business. And I just realized this is on me. This is my bad here. We have a Ronnie T-shirts vote from the road, and I neglected to get to it before we went to the poll results. But by God, it's not too late to see what Ronnie T-Shirt's opinion is. I don't know. Ronnie, I feel like Ronnie, he's not going to vote for Steve Carlton. He's not going to vote for the Karate Kid. It's going to come down to McNuggets and bonfires. I predict that Ronnie's going to vote for bonfires. This is like the newlywed game for me and Ronnie. I'm going to say bonfires. Let's go to Ronnie T-Shirts and find out who he's voting for.
Hey Ricky, I'm coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, and I'm going to break down the poll of the day only like I can. And Karate Kid, iconic movie of the 80s, so I do think that's going to do very well. Steve Carlton, one of the names that I do remember for pitchers that were not with the Cincinnati Reds from that era. McNuggets, dude, if you're going to get McNuggets, or if you're going to get chicken nuggets, you got to go like Chick-fil-A. Chicken McNuggets are like chopped up chicken parts, so I'm a no-go on McNuggets. I don't even know the last time I had them. Bonfires, I mean, who doesn't love a bonfire? I mean, it's kind of like an aphrodisiac if you're there with the right person. So I'm going to go bonfires, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I was correct that Ronnie was going to vote for bonfires. What I didn't know is that they turned him on. How about that? I'm a little sorry that we asked, aren't you? They're a little bit of an aphrodisiac. Ronnie's walking around the bonfire with a semi. I don't think I want to go to any bonfires with Ronnie. In fact, I think I'm going to have to go to a break now and reflect on what just happened. It's going to change the way I look at bonfires and perhaps Ronnie T-shirts as well forever. But don't you go anywhere. Stick around. We've still got some surprises up our sleeves. We'll be back right after this, right here on the Ricky Cobb Show.
Football's finally back. So's the hard-hitting gridiron action on PrizePicks. Download PrizePicks and use code OUTKICK and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play $5. Must be present in certain states. Visit PrizePicks.com for restrictions and details.
And welcome back to the program here on a Monday afternoon in Chicago. And don't look now. WNBA playoffs well underway. We're to the semifinals now. And our old friends, the Indiana Fever, are 6 wins away from a WNBA championship. Yeah, I'm going to make it sound dramatic like that. Knocking off the Las Vegas Aces and the MVP of the league, Asia Wilson, 89-73 in Game 1 in Vegas, stealing home court advantage in the best-of-5 series. They win behind 34 points from Kelsey Mitchell. So how about that? Have you ever heard of the Ewing theory? I got any Bill Simmons readers from back in the day here watching the program? I'm sure some of you were, as I was. Ewing theory was a Bill Simmons thing about how sometimes teams come together and inexplicably play better when their best player's out. And are we seeing that right now with the Indiana Fever? This is a best-of-5 series, semifinals. So they are 2 wins away from punching a ticket to the finals, which is a best-of-7 now. They're doing it without Sophie Cunningham, who is off somewhere twerking in a mall, probably. And they're doing it without Caitlin Clark, who was limited to just 13 games this season. And here's the thing. As I've said many times, Caitlin Clark, yes, she's their best player. Caitlin Clark is one of the best players in the league when she's healthy. But the amount of fame that she has over everybody else in the WNBA is a lot wider than the difference in ability. And sometimes we got to stop and remember, yes, she's more famous than everybody else in the WNBA put together, probably. But that doesn't mean that she's a better player than everybody else in the league put together. We're finding out that the Indiana Fever is a pretty good team without Caitlin Clark. Are they better with her? Of course they're better with her. Okay, let's not make that the title of anything here. Don't say that Ricky Cobb said that they're better without her, because that's fucking stupid. They're not better without her. She is their best player. However, are they good without her? They've got some good players, and Kelsey Mitchell, we're finding out this year, is a damn good basketball player. So, the Indiana Fever, who knows? Frisky. What if they made it to the finals without Caitlin Clark? That'd be pretty wild. All right, let's talk a little more NFL, though, shall we? I haven't quite finished up with my salute to autumn and the autumn wind being a raider. How about Bum Phillips talking about great coaches? I shouted out Tom Landry and John McKay earlier in this program. This is one of my favorite. I've tweeted about Bum a lot through the years. He's my all-time favorite NFL coach. How can you not love a guy who looks like that and coaches games dressed like that? And this is a real quote, by the way. This isn't one of my things that I imagine, as I frequently do at Super 70 Sports. But Bum Phillips actually said this. Earl Campbell one time didn't finish a mile run during a Houston Oilers practice, and the media asked Bum about it, and Bum said, "When it's first in a mile, I won't give it to him." Problem solved. That's what I call a practical thinker. If it's first down in a mile, give it to, I don't know, give it to another guy. Maybe pass. That's an option. Earl Campbell was pretty good when he didn't have more than 99 yards to go, however, I assure you. Now, one thing that has changed dramatically since my childhood is the way that players prepare, particularly during the offseason, but the level of fitness in the league, I would not argue it's a lot better today than it was back in my day. I've talked before about baseball on the show, that spring training used to be when you went down to Florida or you went out to Arizona and you worked off the 10 or 15 pounds of beer weight that you put on during the off season. And those guys were working jobs during the off season a lot of the time as well. Now, guys get paid enough money that they recognize their job 365 days a year is being a professional football player. And the ones that really care the most are taking care of their bodies during the off season as though it's the regular season. And Tom Brady, perhaps the most famous example of that, Tom Brady monitored his health with a strict exercise and nutrition plan and regular advanced medical testing. As many of you know, he used to drink kale shakes during the off season. Ken Stabler, on the other hand, woke up that morning, so he figured he was probably okay. Advantage? Stabler. I'm not drinking a fucking kale shake. Ken Stabler was just fine. And Ken Stabler in that photo, I believe, is 38 years old. Pretty sure he's 38 there. At the very end of his career with the Saints. And I'm not knocking him. He's my all-time favorite quarterback. But I'm just saying it was a different era. Guys did not train like Tom Brady. It's not normal. Tom Brady is practically 50 years old. He looks like he's getting younger every year. I'm not sure what the fuck is going on with that. He might be a vampire. Now, I was talking earlier about NFL films and what an impression it made on me. One thing that NFL films has done for me is it gave me an appreciation of the players who played before my memory. I've seen so much footage of Jim Brown, I feel like I was there in the 50s and 60s watching this motherfucker. And for a long time, I would have told you that Jim Brown is the greatest running back in the history of football. And if you want to say he's the greatest running back in the history of football, I'm not inclined to argue with you very much, although I will give that nod to Walter Payton. But Jim Brown led the league in rushing 8 times in 9 years. 9 years in the league, 8 rushing titles, then retired at age 29 to go make movies with Telly Savalas and Raquel Welch. When I was 29, I wasn't even sure what the fuck I wanted to be yet. That's a true story. I got my bachelor's degree when I was 29. I was like Roy Hobbs. I got a little bit sidetracked along the way. Jim Brown had already said, okay, I'm the best lacrosse player of all time. I'm the best running back of all time, certainly to that point in time. Who had an argument, if not Jim Brown when he retired? Now I'll go make movies, probably have sex with Raquel Welch, according to what I've read. Not bad. But as great as Jim Brown was, his dick wasn't a fist. least as far as I know. But this man's was Vince Lombardi. Vincent Lombardi, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. His penis was a fist. I don't know. Can we get AI John Facenda? Is that possible? We're doing everything else with AI. I just want AI John Facenda. I want AI Keith Jackson. That'll take care of the NFL. That'll take care of college football. I'll be a very happy boy if we can do that. If we're going to have AI and it's going to be affecting everything, why did we put our focus into driverless cars and shit like that before John Facenda? And Harry Carey calling Cubs games again, too, by the way. Can the artificial intelligence people get on the really important stuff? I would appreciate it if you could. And one more important thing that I want to mention before we're through today is the incredible day that Isaiah Rodgers of the Minnesota Vikings had yesterday. If you haven't heard about this, if you have heard about it, we still need to talk about it again. Look at this. 87-yard interception return for a touchdown. 66-yard fumble return. He caused the fumble, picked it up, scooped it up, as I prefer to say, took it to the house 66 yards. 153 yards of return touchdowns there for Isaiah Rodgers, and he forced another fumble on top of it. And he did it all in the first half against the Bengals yesterday. Are you not entertained? Russell Crowe in Gladiator wasn't kicking ass any better than that. He is the first player in the history of the NFL to have a pick six, a fumble return for a touchdown, and 2 forced fumbles in the same game, and he did it all before the intermission. So Isaiah Rodgers, have yourself a day. Incredible performance by the defensive back from the Minnesota Vikings. All right, so here's where we really miss Ron. Of course, we've been missing Ron since the top of the program. You can't replace an asset like a Ronnie T-shirts. Thankfully, he showed up to tell us that bonfires turn him on. I don't know. Ronnie bonfires. I've got to figure. I'm still processing this. All right, so Ronnie's not here, and this is the point in the show where I'll look at Ron, turn my head sideways, and I'll ask him a very significant question. So he's not here today, so I'm going to bring you a couple on my own. This is my favorite. 58-year-old man plays Division III football. Look at this sweet bastard. Division III Lycoming College. Tom Sillo, who quit high school football, according to Front Office Sports. He quit high school to do drugs. That seems like a good reason. Look, if you're gonna quit high school, you might as well do it to do drugs. Then he worked for the city's Streets and Parks Department for 33 years. And upon his retirement, decided that he was ready for some football. And there he is at age 58. Look at him. 6 foot, 227, Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Look at this motherfucker. Live your dreams, Thomas Sillo. We're all behind you. This guy is a great American, obviously, but as I said at the beginning of the show, at age 54, I don't know how I would feel about getting out there and playing football with a bunch of 20 and 21-year-olds. It's the starting out part is easy. The getting up off the ground part, I think, would be the hard part. You take a few high-impact collisions on a body that is approaching age 60, and Thomas is going to be feeling it, but I'm going to try to follow along. I don't know if he's going to be seeing many snaps this year or not. He's on the defensive side of the football, so I don't know. I think we should check on him periodically during the year and see how he's doing. And one more here, certainly something that I appreciated yesterday was CBS going with the throwbacks. And there you have Ian Eagle and J.J. Watt going old school there. Awful announcing, tweeting, is that Ian Eagle or Burt Reynolds? Who's to say? And how about the glasses on J.J. Watt? I think I'm a bigger fan of the frames that JJ's got going. That reminds me, that's about how it looked back in the late 80s when I would watch CBS games on satellite. Vern Lundquist and Terry Bradshaw. Although neither one of them had a mustache like that. Although Terry was known to rock some glasses that are kind of reminiscent of what JJ has on there. Let's go to poll replies here to put a bow on this one today. See what folks are saying. We've got a close one today. And look at that. Bonfires up by just 1% here. Nice range. 17 to 30. That is I'll give myself an A- for this poll, but it appears that the Karate Kid has a chance, although we're approaching 5,000 votes now, which is going to make it a tough ask for the Karate Kid to make that up, but they might, and you never know. McNuggets is just going to run a respectable third. A little bit of disrespect today for Steve Carlton. Let's see what people are saying. The Protoss prophecy says Nugs all day, every day. Johnny Oldfield is riding the McNugget train as well. Tom says, very tough one. Between Steve Carlton and the Karate Kid, I'm really doing some soul searching. Anthony Bialy says, Karate Kid's the best around. Anthony's a fine American as well. Longtime Super 70s follower. Great mustache. There, as you see. Solid avatar game from him. And Bill Bleak says, wax on, wax off daily. Big time Karate Kid. Karate's never here. Daniel was the bad guy, right? Can we all agree on that? You show up, you take away a motherfucker's girlfriend, you get in a karate tournament with rules, and then you just kick him in the fucking face. I think over time, more people have come around to where my position has been for decades. That Daniel had it coming. He needed a good ass kicking. Hiding behind Miyagi is what he did. I'm a Johnny Lawrence guy forever. Cobra Kai, motherfucker. You encounter a man on the streets, in a dojo, he's the enemy. Is what I learned from the great John Kreese. By God. All right. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this one. Football season is underway. Ronnie T-Shirts is wandering around the American West somewhere. He was in Oakland, I think, the last time that I heard from him. So, Godspeed on your travels, Ronnie T-Shirts. My thanks to the great Mike Vaccaro of the New York Post for joining me today, to Molly and Colin in Nashville, to P.A. Jarrett, and to Nick for setting in with us today as well. Tim is out today, but Nick is here taking care of business with us as well. My thanks to all of these fine people, and my thanks most of all, speaking of fine people, is to you sweet bastards, because you're the reason that we do this, and I do love you. You can find us, as always, at Fox Nation, outkick.com, and YouTube on the Ricky Cobb Show channel. Just type in the Ricky Cobb Show. You will find us. Subscribe on YouTube, if you will. We would appreciate that. We are in podcast form on both Apple and Spotify, and you can also find our content on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and yes, of course, X, where you will find me working away every day, as I have for over 10 years, as the Super 70 sports guy. Drop by and pay me a visit. And more importantly, let's make a deal that we'll meet right back here again tomorrow, when we will tee it high and let it fly with another episode of The Ricky Cobb Show.